So the pure ice-type snowflake Pokemon basically can click flamethrower these days, and I think that's kind of funny, so today we're going to see if we can get it to melt some stuff. Cryogonal's a zero usage mon in the competitive scene, but it actually's got some pretty good value, and I think it's overlooked. The main thing is that it's got great speed at base 105, and even has amazing special bulk with 135 and some usable base 95 special attack. I like to throw on some heavy-duty boots on the guy to avoid any hazard damage on switch-in, plus the flake be fresh as hell in some Tims. Hide your girl because we're stepping out. It's able to provide great value on a lot of teams, being able to be a speedy hazard removal with rapid spin, which also comes with a nice little built-in speed boost. With that speed boost, we become faster than a ton of the meta, and we can delete common threats with freeze dry, which is an ice type move that's also super effective on water types. Terra Blast Fire is its most satisfying tool to punish steel type defensive answers, and to round off its set, we've got Flash Cannon just in case. It also gets the Levitate ability, which literally everybody forgets about. And overall, Cryogonal is one of those mons that just provides more value than people expect. And so today it's time to see if we can get it to become a menace. It's the big 2025 and we got the snowflake Pokemon clicking flamethrower pretty much. And it turns out there's no rules anymore. Look, if this sounds like a fun time to you, consider hitting that subscribe button. I'm always trying to get weird Pokemon to do weird stuff and we have a pretty fun time doing it. Look, Cryogonal wearing the boots is clutch. But before we jump right into the action, let me tell you about another thing that's incredibly clutch. It's today's sponsor, Zen Market. Look, all of the coolest stuff comes from Japan, and most of the time you can't even buy it unless you live there. Luckily, Zen Market is a proxy shopping service that helps you buy and ship goods directly from Japanese websites like a local, without needing to physically be there with the Japanese address. You can find products from just about any Japanese website you think of, add them to your Zen Market shopping cart, pay for your products and shipping, create a parcel that comes with a 60-day free storage period so you can add some more stuff before they send your package from their warehouse to you. Zen Market's one of the best ways I've found to easily be able to order some really cool rare Pokemon stuff. I'm mostly a sucker for cool Japanese Pokemon cards. Something about them just feels way more fun to open than the English ones. Even the card stock is better. The selection of Japanese Pokemon TCG on Zen Market is legit everything you can ask for, even including brand new sets. There's over 10,000 Japanese stores to work with. Special shout out to the Japanese Pokemon Center though, it's kind of the go. Zen Market is trusted by over 2 million users worldwide, and right now if this sounds like something you'd be interested in, you can get a 1,000 Zen point sign up bonus with my promo code Haydunn. So a huge shout out to Zen Market, and with that, let's go ahead and jump into the match. Alright, so my opponent is going to go ahead and lead off with a Furret, and as I've got the Rotom Wash, I'm honestly mildly afraid. If someone's using a Furret, it just means they know ball, and I am going to try to stop this thing in its tracks with whatever the hell it wants to do, probably tidy up turn 1. And just start boosting. So I'm gonna go for the Insurance Will-O-Wisp. Now they do go for the Tidy Up, which is, you gotta admit, one of the funniest moves out. It just pulls out the brooms, sweeps it up. That's basically a Dragon Dance. I assume the owner of this restaurant is probably stoked. They're like, generally people come in here and battle and go for earthquakes and just destroy the place, but the Tidy Up is nice. Now, while we're talking about that, I missed the Will-O-Wisp, of course, because it's a Willow miss. You know, you can't ever expect it to hit. It does miss. And the Furret is now able to go for the last resort, but luckily, Rotom Wash is just thick enough to be able to live it. So I end up going for the Thunder Wave this time. Luckily, as I'm on my last breath here, I do get the Thunder Wave off. Doesn't miss like the Will-O-Wisp. This Rotom is kind of mean. I mean, it's here to just cripple things and make, you know, my life easier for the mons in the back. So I get the Thunder Wave off, and that tells me that luckily I'm not going to get destroyed by a turn 1 Furret. That would be diabolical. I now can hit on a Hydro Pump, so... You know, I guess Buddy's got his glasses on now. I do get some good damage, but as they break through the para, they finish me off at the last resort. And I do heavily mess with the last resort Tidy Up Furret. That is it's a fire set. So luckily with it paralyzed, even with a speed boost, I'm going to be faster. So I decide one way I can try to capitalize on this whole situation is going into the Rabombi. Now, I can go for the Quiver Dance and guarantee I obviously get that off. And if they get fully paralyzed, I'll be able to essentially keep my Focus Sash intact. And then it's feeling like Rabombi has a chance to get a good sweep going. Problem is, this Furret does not give a damn. They do break through the para, they get off another last resort, hit me with the star, and, you know, I have to use my Focus Sash. It was worth a try, because if that gets a full para there, you know, Rabombi is locked and loaded for some little fairy destruction. So, at least now I can outspeed, finish it off with the Moonblast, and, you know, honestly, that Furret did more than you generally expect the guy to. It did, you know, honestly cripple 2 of my mons, so they're lucky I like Furret. The long boy's sick, and I'll allow it. So here's the thing, now they go into a Sudowoodo, and I'm looking at this thinking, what does Sudowoodo do here? It clicks Sucker Punch, that makes sense, does knock out the Rabombi. I honestly thought the thing might click Sucker Punch. I decided to play it safe and just attack, and turns out it was not safe at all, and now I suffer a Rocky Punch from a fake tree. So here's the thing. Now I can at least go into whatever I want. I decide, you know what? I'm going to go into the Garchomp here. I got the choice specs, special attacking Chomp. They're probably going to think that maybe they can, you know, take an attack from this thing. I could potentially go for the Surf. I decide, you know what? Draco Meteor is kind of a safer option. With the specs, it should be able to knock the thing out anyway. But check it out. They end up going for the Terra. They're going to go for the Terra Grass. Just like allowing the Sudowoodo to live out its full dreams. Now he's a real plant. Thing looks, I don't know if I've ever seen Sudowoodo go for a Terra, actually. Regardless, though, luckily I didn't click Surf because the Draco Meteor just melts it. And that is exactly what we like to see, and the reason why you just go for Draco Meteor. Choice specs Draco Meteor does not matter who's using it. That's going to hurt. So that takes care of Sudowoodo, also removes their option for a Terra. And that is a pretty solid turn that kind of equalizes things here. So now they decide to go into their own Garchomp, and that is a little bit of an interesting and scary situation. I obviously am not in a point to click another Draco Meteor. I'm thinking at -2, I just die to whatever this thing wants to go for. If it turns out to be like a Scale Shot set, that's going to be not ideal. I'm kind of just fearing the Scale Shot here. So I decided to go into the Clefable. Turns out they clicked Draco Meteor themselves. And while I thought I may have bamboozled them with the special attacking Garchomp, they have one too. So I'm like, well, that makes sense. So here's the thing. I decide I'm a choice banded Clefable because of course I am. I decided to go for the Focus Punch, expecting a potential switch into the Lucario. And as they do switch, they go into the one thing that is not ideal. It turns out to be the Alchemy. And as I do get the Focus Punch off, choice banded Focus Punch from an Adamant Max Attack Clefable does still do over half. Because Focus Punch is just built like that. So that's kind of funny. Boy, do I wish I would have gotten that Focus Punch off on a Lucario. That would have been so nice. If you want to see some more choice banded Clefable action, go ahead and check out my video on that thing. It's really funny. So here's the thing. I decide now to go into the Cryogonal just because if there's an Alchemy out, it's going to go for some stored power nonsense. It does go for the Acid Armor. It gets a +2 to physical defense, but what they don't know is that I can take a little forehead cannon right to the face. Cryogonal does have the coverage with the Flash Cannon that is enough to take care of it, and that's all thanks to Clefable's chip with the Focus Punch. So that's extremely clutch. I think could have gotten a little out of hand, and that feels nice. So as I'm looking at the remainder of the match here, they're down to 3 Mons left. And as Lucario is a bad matchup, I'm feeling like if there's one situation that can be a win condition in Cryogonal just sweeping the rest of the game. And first of all, I'm thinking Lucario probably doesn't attack here. Now, if they do, I decide to go for the Terra Fire. And as much as I want to just go for that Terra Fire Blast, I do need to get off a Rapid Spin first. And even though they don't have any hazards on my side, I decided to go for that Rapid Spin basically just for the speed boost. Now, they don't go for the attack. They do go for the Swords Dance, which is perfect. I go for that Terra Fire on this turn just in case they wanted to attack. It would have allowed me to live it with a neutral. But since I get that Rapid Spin off, not only do I break a potential Sash, but now I get that +1 to speed. I'm now faster, and check it out. Flamethrower, Snowflake, baby. Able to roast and toast, and that's a Steel type that just got bamboozled straight to the Shadow Realm. That is exactly what this Cryogonal is supposed to do. So not only that, we grabbed the satisfying kill there, but since they've already used up their Terra, their final 2 Mons being fast dragons, I will be faster with that speed boost. I can now go for a Freeze Dry on the Garchomp that is enough to take care of it, and that is super clutch because now the final Mon being the Salamence is about to get his ass freeze dried, bagged, and sold as candy. Bro's basically looking like a big ass green Skittle over there. So Fat Dragon is just floating in the air somehow with these wings barely flapping. A Freeze Dry is going to come through, and that is going to be able to take care of it. So the double dragons in the back could have been extremely scary had they been able to set up just one Dragon Dance and I would have been toast. But luckily the Snowflake comes through for us and we're just slowly melting away. But we are able to take the dub on that one. Shout out to the Cryogonal. That thing is, anytime you can get a Terra Fire Blast off is a good day with that thing. So that's going to do it for game number 1. Look, that's going to bring us now into game number 2. And if you've stuck around this far into the video, go ahead and do me a favor, hit that like button. It really does help out the channel. I don't know, there's like a new hype feature on YouTube videos now too. I don't know. Click whatever buttons they got down there for you because, I don't know, the algorithm likes it. And with that, let's go ahead and just jump into this next match. All right, so this time my opponent is going to go ahead and lead off with the Landorus. Now, lead Landorus is one of 2 things, right? It's either going to be a Choice Scarf here and just go for a U-turn and get a pivot after an Intimidate, or it's going to click Taunts. And as I've got the Swampert, I'm just going to go for the Stealth Rock every time here. Turns out, though, this is going to go for the Taunt. And it's almost like every single time you think it's going to be one set, it's always the other. So, you know, stops my Stealth Rock from being set up. That's really not that big of a deal because now I can just flip turn. I can get some decent damage. Either that or I scare this thing away with the potential of having ice coverage. Even though I don't have it, I can threaten it. But, you know, they stay in. They go for their Stealth Rock of their own, which feels rude. To taunt to stop me from going for mine and then going for yours, kind of a bitch move, Landorus, not going to lie. I go for the flip turn here, get some nice chip. Also, it kind of tells me a little bit about what this thing might be working with. I don't see Rocky Helmet. I don't know what item it's rocking, but what I do know is I can bring in Cryogonal. I got the boots on, so we don't give a damn about the Stealth Rock. And I can also rapid spin those away. So look, if I'm this Landorus, my ass is switching 1,000 miles away. A freeze dry just destroys 10 of these things. So I'm like, you know what? I can predict the switch, go for a rapid spin, and profit. However, they of course stay in. So I could have gotten a free kill there. Regardless, though, I at least get rid of the Stealth Rock, which is nice. And the reason why they stay in is because they have the Rock Tomb, which is going to be able to do a ton of damage. Luckily, I do live. It does drop my speed, so that kind of just negates my rapid spin speed boost. But I'm just happy that I was able to live that, because now I'm absolutely going to have to click freeze dry. There's really not an option. Even though they probably switch, which they do, something's about to get freeze dried. And as long as Cryogonal's alive, we're going to still have some pretty good value. So the best thing is their special defensive switch in turns out to be the Tentacruel, right? This thing's thick as hell. It can take a couple freeze dries, but not unless it turns his ass into a jellyfish popsicle, baby. We do get the freeze. Freeze dry is one of those moves that it feels like the freezes come through often. I don't know what it is. Sometimes when you're clicking it, you can just feel that it's going to freeze something. So with that in mind, I'm just going to go for another freeze dry. If it thaws out, which it likely does, it can just, you know, kill me. But it doesn't. It stays frozen. And that, you know, while I do mildly feel bad, I don't feel that bad. Because what's great about once I get rid of this Tentacruel is honestly, Cryogonal looks pretty good in this matchup. So I'm going to finish it with one more freeze dry. And that's some RNG on our side, for sure. It happens, but, you know, we'll take it. That's going to be able to take care of the Tentacruel and, you know, chalk one up for the Snowflake fella. So, like I said, Cryogonal has a great matchup against pretty much their entire team, except for one, and that's freaking Iron Valiant. So they obviously go into the Valiant. This thing's chrome like the futuristic episode of SpongeBob, and it also gets a Quark Drive. So that's going to boost the thing's speed, and this is a very scary mod. If I don't play my cards right, I could be in a little bit of trouble here. But I've got things like the Sucker Punch Bisharp, and I can, first of all, I decide to switch into Swampert. The bad part about Valiant is you never know what it's really going to do, if it's going to be physical, if it's going to be special. As they go for the Calm Mind, Swampert comes into basically a bad time here. You know, we're glistening in the sun on the beach, but as a Calm Mind boosted Valiant, I'm in danger. One thing is, though, I know I can at least take an attack, and I need to get off an Earthquake for as much damage as possible. As they hit me with a Moonblast, Swampert's big thick ass is able to take it. I get over half with an Earthquake. And that feels pretty good because that gives me a couple of different options to deal with this now. I can use up my Focus Ash Rabombi. I have the Bisharp in the back, but I also have Wheezing, which doesn't sound like a great answer, but it could be. So here's the thing. They go for another Moonblast that takes care of Swampert. Unfortunately, I lose Swampert after not having Stealth Rock up, which does kind of suck. And at this point, I decide to go into the Wheezing. I had a few options, but I feel like the most fun might be to go Wheezing. So as I bait them into clicking a Psychic, my plan is to go for the Terra Dark, finish it with a Sludge Wave, and profit. Now, as it turns out, my dumbass forgot to click the Terra Dark, and and I immediately pay the price and look like an idiot at the same time. I lose Wheezing for literally nothing there. As I swear to God, I hit the right trigger. It turns out I didn't. It's like when you respond to a text message in your mind and then never actually respond. Sometimes I Terra without actually clicking the Terra. So that's really cool. I waste the Wheezing, and now I'm playing from a little bit behind. I go into plan B, which is going to be Rabombi, which sucks because this thing is obviously faster. I have to use up my Sash, and while I do live the attack, I can fire off a Moonblast back at him, and that takes care of the Valiant, but, you know, I blew it a little bit there, and it happens, but it's fine. I am definitely on a little bit of the back foot here, but it's okay. We're going to see what we can do. So as they go back into Landorus here, this thing comes in, it's pretty low. It's like almost half. I'm like, a Moonblast probably gets close to killing, probably not going to quite be enough, but they're just going to set up Stealth Rock anyway. I'm just going to go for the Moonblast. If I have enough damage, that would be sick. It, of course, does not. And they also just end up going for the Earthquake instead. I was hoping that they were going to Stealth Rock there. They likely don't, just because they know I have the Rapid Spin Boots Cryogonal in the back, but an Earthquake finishes me, and that hurts. So I don't have a whole lot left here. But again, Snowflake has a matchup that could make this winnable. So first of all, I do go into the Cryogonal, and the bad thing is knowing that like they have mons that can take attacks from the guy. I just go into this because I know I'm faster. It's my best bet to just finishing off this Landorus here. They have nothing that wants to switch into a freeze dry, so they let this thing go down, and that's going to take care of Landorus. So at this point, Cryogonal's a little bit of a sitting duck here. One of the one things that I'm worried about again is going to be Crocodile, because Crocodile can be a few different things here. Again, for some reason, I'm always more afraid of a Scale Shot set, and knowing that a freeze dry just doesn't have enough to OHKO this thing, I decided to bring in the Dot Spun. What that does is it stops this thing from going for the Scale Shot, obviously being fairy type, but also gives me a little bit of intel on what this thing's working with. Now, as they go for the Earthquake, that is going to do less than half, and honestly, the second thing I'm worried about is a Choice Scarf. A Choice Scarf Crocodile. I don't know if that's what this thing's gonna be yet, but knowing that I can live another Earthquake, I need to just get one Play Rough or a Body Press off on the guy just to get the amount of chip that I need to put it in range for a Freeze Dry. So they go for another Earthquake, and as that's just their biggest damage, that's fine. I live it. I do get off the Play Rough, luckily. That does put it in range for a Freeze Dry to pick it off with a Cryogonal, but again, I don't know if this thing's Choice Scarf at this point. If it's not Scarf, I could obviously switch into the Levitating Cryogonal here, but I decided just to play it safe. I'm just going to let this thing go down. They do go for another Earthquake here, and that does finish off the Dot Spawn, but I got the amount of chip that I needed to obviously just put it into range, and it does get a little Moxie boost here. So the Crocodile's looking scary, and obviously as I have a potential Sucker Punch with the Bisharp in the back, that's a nice insurance policy for things like the Latios. But first, I go into the Cryogonal here. Check it out. They go for the Earthquake. They are Choice Scarf, but Buddy forgot about the Levitating Snowflake. We're able to float above it, and I can finish it with a Freeze Dry. And that's pretty satisfying because people just don't see Cryogonal a lot. And honestly, even sometimes I forget that this thing has Levitate. So absolutely love to see it. So look, they're now down to 2 Mons left. It's going to be a Garchomp and a Latios in the back. Now, here's the thing about this Garchomp. It is almost guaranteed that this Garchomp is going to go for a Terra here. They don't bring this thing in, especially still having their Terra intact, and not click it. So I am going to go for the Terra of my own. I go for the Terra Fire, and I click the Terra Blast. Now, the reason for that is because if this thing goes for a Terra Steel, that is going to be the most satisfying thing ever. It turns out they do go for the Terra, so I'm sitting here like, I am a genius. I've got a Terra Blast on a Steel type now, and that's going to be sick. Nope. They're of course Terra Fire, and that is so annoying. I almost had it. I was like, dude, this thing has to go for the Terra Steel here, like every damn Garchomp ever. But of course, you know, now we both have chandeliers on our heads, looking like a bunch of fools, and now it does nothing. But it was worth the try. Had I gotten that prediction correct, that would have been incredibly sick. Now, it turns out they go for the Earthquake here, as, you know, they Earthquake twice in a row. So I don't know how many times I gotta teach you this lesson, old man, but I am floating. I avoid that. I can at least get off another Terra Blast for some extra chip, which honestly is kind of valuable. That amount of damage is still pretty good, because as much as I can whittle this thing down, the better, because my last kind of ditch effort is a Sucker Punch Bisharp in the back. And luckily, I do have a matchup against things like the Latios, but as the Garchomp is going to prove a little bit more of a problem. So I can get off another Terra Blast. 3 Terra Blast Fires does put this thing below half. And that is incredibly sick, because as they finish me off with a Scale Shot here, that's actually the best thing they could have gone for. And that's just because now they get a defensive drop from that. So as my final mon is going to be Bisharp, can we do it against 2 Scary Dragons? I guess Scary Fire Dragon here, but they get the speed boost. Doesn't matter because Bisharp believes in just straight up sucker punches right to the jaw. So I go into my final mon, gonna be the Eviolite Bisharp, and I obviously have to click Sucker Punch here. An Earthquake knocks me out. However, as they know a Sucker Punch is likely coming, they end up swapping here and they bring in Latios, which is really, honestly, kind of fine. I have to Sucker Punch there anyway, so as that doesn't do anything, now we've gotten ourselves in a 1v1, which is perfect for me. Now, looking at Latios, I'm like, what does this thing even do in terms of damage versus an Eviolite Bisharp? The answer is nothing. As they go for a Dragon Pulse, we absolutely eat that up. Eviolite Bisharp is the GOAT. That allows me to now get up a Swords Dance. Now, the reason why I click Swords Dance here is because now, as that Garchomp can come back in, it's guaranteed that a Sucker Punch kills it. So I just go for a Sucker Punch anyway here as well, because they have to attack, right? If they switch back into Chomp, I just basically spam Sucker Punches. They do attack. That takes care of the Latios. And now we've got this kind of right where we want it against the 1v1 on the Chomp. I have the Swords Dance up. We're feeling sharp as hell. And even if this thing's like super defensive Chomp, I think we still have the upper hand here. I go for the Sucker Punch. Turns out they are going to, you know, obviously they know that that's kind of the win con. So they end up going for the Swords Dance. And now we find ourselves in the interesting stalemate you often find yourself in when you have a Swords Dance Bisharp, is that they know that they can avoid that via Swords Dances. So look, if I'm them, I probably just Swords Dance again here. I decide to go for the 50-50 play, and instead of going for the Sucker Punch, I click the Throat Chop. We make the right call, because they do continue to Swords Dance here, and the Throat Chop is going to come through, and that is going to be able to finish the game. So that's an interesting kind of late game there, where like they could have, if I continued to Sucker Punch, they could have gone for SDs until I ran out of them. So I had to make the sketchy play eventually, and it pays off. So that's going to be a dead Garchomp. That is going to be the end of the game on that one. Bisharp saves the day. And that was a cool match. So thank you guys very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, as always, make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. And I will catch you guys next time. Peace out.